Hi, I'm Un Svanström, a UX and product designer, and this is my channel. It's all about UX and product design, which makes sense because that's what I do. Today we're going to be talking about something that's very important in order to grow as a designer, and that is feedback. And more specifically, we're going to go through how to give feedback in a caring way so that your coworkers don't hate you, because that would be bad. I want the best for you, okay? So we're going to look at how you can up your feedback game and give more compassionate feedback that's really going to help other people grow. So let's get started. Given week, I will receive and give feedback. I will give asynchronous feedback, that is going into somebody's design file and leaving comments on their designs, but I will also be in a design critiquing session or do a one-on-one feedback with someone. And in all of these feedback scenarios, whether you're going into somebody's design file by yourself and looking things through, or if you're in a room with a bunch of other, a digital call. I remember rooms. Rooms were nice. Anyway, whether you're critiquing somebody's design by yourself, or if you're in a meeting with other designers critiquing their work, there are a few things that to remember that will help you give good feedback. So this is my point of view on giving feedback. One of the first things I need to know to be able to give valid feedback is to know the point of the service, to know the point of this feature. If I don't know what you are trying to achieve by implementing this feature, I won't be able to give you good feedback. I need to be able to sympathize with the users, understand what problems, try to imagine what problems the users will have, and then I can give you my perspective on how you can help them better in my feedback. So make sure that you don't give any feedback at all until you understand the point of that service, okay? And if you don't, ask questions. Asking questions, and often open questions, are a really good way of getting into the head of that designer who is working on it and have them elaborate on what it is they're trying to achieve. I'm not always very interested in exactly how they made things, but I want to know the reasoning behind it. Like, why did you take this path, and why do you think it'll benefit the user? Like, what was the user doing before they started this workflow? Where will they go after? What are they really trying to achieve? Do they really want to be talking to customer support at this point, or is that just something that they have to do? Is this a feature of necessity, or is it a feature that people really enjoy? One of the reasons you do design critiques is so that you can get somebody else's perspective. When I give design feedback, I want to express what I see when I look at the design that is presented. I talk about where my eye goes first. First, I see this big red button, and I also see that there is red up here in the navigation. So those two are what I see first, and then there is a flimmer, there's some kind of movement going on over here, so that steals my attention, but that's probably not what I was intended to look at, but that's where my eye goes. Tell the designer what you can see and how you kind of process the information on that page, because that can be really useful. Let me get into some of the worst possible ways to give feedback. One is to be really, really vague and be like, I don't like it. It's not nice. Can you be more creative with this? I don't like blue. This just doesn't pop. Feedback like that can drive a designer nuts, like cuckoo nuts. When you say I don't like it, that's like the worst possible feedback, because like I need to become a detective. Like, what is it that you don't like about it? And how do I fix it? Like, I can't read your mind and know exactly what you want, or like why you don't like it. Give me specific, like what. Also, what feedback like that doesn't do is it doesn't really talk about the user's problems. I always try to get into the mindset of the user when I'm giving feedback. Try to frame your feedback into a problem that the user most likely will have. And you not liking it might not be relevant at all, because you know what? You're not the end user. And that's also something to be really mindful of. By remembering that you're not the end user, you kind of get a filter for your opinions to like not, because it's not really your opinions that matter at the end of the day. It's the users. So my point of view is just what I see as a designer, but it's not what the end user will think. And that's important to keep in mind. Don't use feedback as a weapon, which I've seen happen. Hurts. Usually, when you give design feedback, it's a good idea not to be too prescriptive. Not to say, can you make the logo bigger? Explain in detail exactly how you would redo the design, but rather point out where you believe the problem areas are. For instance, I was giving feedback yesterday, and it felt like the top part of the page kind of disconnected from the lower half, like the colors didn't quite match. And instead of me going into problem-solving mode, the important thing of design feedback is just capturing that there is a problem going on. And then instead of going into like a groupthink kind of scenario where everyone's trying to solve the problem, just hand that problem over to the designer. That designer is super capable of solving the problem of the colors not matching from the top half to the bottom half of the page. It's their job. They'll figure it out and it's going to be great. So don't go into problem-solving mode too early in your design critiques. Just point out where the problems are and the designer can fix it. If the designer wants your opinion on how to solve it, they'll probably ask. So don't go telling me that the button should be blue instead of green just because you think so. It's very, very prescriptive. And being prescriptive in your feedback is a great way of getting people very, very annoyed with you. I promise. And this is one of the secrets in how not to make designers mad. Another great way to get designers to hate you is to get personal with your design critiques. To say, I don't like what you did with this menu. You're not a very good designer. Don't say that. No. Never ever get personal in your feedback. Even if you don't like the design that you're critiquing, try to phrase it in a non-personal way. Rather than saying, I don't like what you did with this navigation, maybe you can say, the navigation might be hard to find when it's collapsed like this. Maybe you could explore some other directions here. A lot of times in design critiques, people are really fast to start pointing out problems, but I think it's equally important to point out what's good and what's really working well in that design that's being presented. Because if you don't tell the designer what's good about a solution, maybe they'll iterate and just get rid of the good stuff. That's not good. So make sure to point out the positives. It's also way harder to identify what is good in a design than to pick out flaws, because flaws are more easily spotted than the really good stuff. So be on the lookout for what's good in a design. One of the reasons that people are so fast at starting to point out perceived flaws in a design is this very, very interesting psychological effect. Humans tend to think that negative evaluators are smarter. And that's not necessarily true, but it's sometimes perceived that way. If you can be the one that points out the flaws, you are perceived as more intelligent. And it's kind of bullshit. There's this really interesting scholarly paper written in 1983 by Teresa M. Amabile, and it's called Brilliant but Cruel: Perceptions of Negative Evaluators. And listen to this. I'm going to read a quote. Negative reviewers were perceived as more intelligent, competent, and expert than positive reviewers, even when the content of the positive review was independently judged as being of higher quality and greater forcefulness. So what does this mean? It means that we as humans have a tendency to think that a negative review is somehow smarter. And people want to sound smart in front of other people, especially their coworkers. You want your coworkers to think that you're intelligent and competent. Those are very nice things to be at work. But this is also a pitfall in order to identify when design is really good, because it takes a really safe environment, a really safe room to be able to go like, this is fucking brilliant. You have one piece of brilliant design right here, right now. Because that's the hardest thing to say, because you run the risk of sounding less competent than the person who could identify the flaws, even when there were no flaws. This is also why a lot of really great design gets picked apart, because every person who gets to have an opinion wants to find the flaw. And if you don't have psychological safety in your design critique setting, it's very easy to get carried away at trying to find the problems and not celebrating what is good about the design. So remember, it's way harder to confidently say, this is really great about this design. What I like about this design is. So make sure to always, always, always point out what you think is good about the design at hand, because that is also going to help the designer to know what to keep and what to discard moving forward. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Make sure to ask, what's the point of this service? Ask lots of questions so the designer gets an opportunity to talk about the design decisions that they've made. When you give feedback, it's about letting the designer know what you can see in their design, so that they have an opportunity to gauge whether their vision made it out of their heads and onto their screen. Please don't be too prescriptive. Don't tell me what to do. I'll figure it out. Just let me know where the problems are. Unless I ask you, what color do you think this button should be? And then please tell me. Give the designers in your life an opportunity to solve the problem themselves. Remember, you are not the user, so don't substitute design feedback for user research. Did I say that? Maybe I didn't, but here it is. Don't substitute design critique for user feedback. Do your research. And don't get personal. Don't say, I don't like what you did. Say, I don't really understand this menu. Point out the positives. Let the designer know what is good so that they can keep that for the next iteration. Humans have a tendency to want to sound smart by saying negative things, and that impresses other people. But don't fall for it. I hope you've gotten some new perspectives, and I would really, really appreciate if you gave me a like and a subscribe, and maybe even write a comment. What are your best ways of giving design feedback? I'm Uns Swanström, and thanks for today.